Good morning. We are beginning our session with Betatron. In the last class you have seen a small YouTube video regarding Betatron, and in the last class we had discussed the accelerator cyclotron, and as you all know, the cyclotron has a limitation, that is the relativistic variation of mass with energy for very high energy particles. So if we need very high energy particles, we have to overcome this relativistic effect. That is, mass will vary with the velocity when the particle has to attain higher energy. So in order to overcome this relativistic effect, we can accelerate the particle by increasing the magnetic field, so that the particle will be in phase with the constant frequency of the alternating potential difference applied. So we are using Betatron in this case. That is, in Betatron, by increasing the magnetic field as the particle accelerate, so as to keep the particles in phase with constant frequency of the alternating potential difference applied. So that's our topic, Betatron. So Betatron is a device for speeding up electron to extremely high energy with the help of expanding magnetic field, or we can say that with the help of or by using magnetic field. This Betatron was constructed in 1941 by D.W. Kirst. This is the picture of the Betatron, where you can see two donut shaped inside a vacuum chamber, and with the help of this Betatron, electrons can be accelerated to very high energy. So what is the principle of Betatron? We are accelerating electrons using Betatron. Electron in a changing magnetic field experiences acceleration in a circular orbit. That means the electrons moving in a stable orbit of a fixed radius are accelerated by increasing the magnetic flux through the orbit. So here you can see the electron orbit. The dotted line represents the electron orbit. See, this orbit is of a constant radius, and this tube is known as the donut tube, inside which this electron is undergoing a constant orbit, and the electrons are ejected into the donut tube from a hot filament, and after achieving the required energy, the electrons are expelled out. So that's the basic construction of a Betatron. So in Betatron, the electrons are moving in a stable orbit of a fixed radius, and these electrons are accelerated by increasing the magnetic flux through the orbit. Now, how Betatron differs from cyclotron? We know that in cyclotron we are placing the entire apparatus between the pole pieces of a magnet, so that magnetic field is applied to the particles, and also the particles are accelerated with the help of electric field. So that in the case of cyclotron, a charged particle which is moving perpendicular in a magnetic field will describe a circular path, and this circular path is having increasing radius since it is allowed to pass through an adjusted electric field. So here electrons are accelerated by expanding magnetic field. In cyclotrons, electrons were accelerated with the help of adjusted electric field. Now the second difference is that in cyclotron you can see that the radius of the particle is increasing as it comes out of the apparatus. But here in betatron the electron is having a constant radius. So that are the two differences between betatron and cyclotron. In cyclotron, the electrons are accelerated by an adjusted electric field, whereas in betatron, the electrons are accelerated by using magnetic field. Now, in cyclotron, the particles are undergoing increasing radius, path of increasing radius, but in betatron, the circular orbit has a constant radius. See, this is another picture again showing the dotted line as the path of the electrons, so that it is having a constant radius capital R. This is a figure representing the construction of a betatron. Here you can see a highly evacuated annular tube which is made up of glass or ceramics, and this tube is not known as donut. And this donut tube is placed between specially shaped pole pieces of an electromagnet. So in the next figure you can see this electromagnet coils, so that this donut is placed between the electromagnetic coils, and this electromagnet is energized by passing current through these coils, and this current, alternating current, is supplied in which increasing magnetic flux is obtained. That means we know that when current changes, there is magnetic field, isn't it? So through these coils there is a flow of current, and this flow of current is increased so that the magnetic flux associated with it also changes. Now these pole pieces of the magnet are made up of laminated iron in order to reduce eddy current losses, and they have been shaped such that the total flux through the orbit is twice the value that would have been if the field were uniform. That means total flux is twice the value of magnetic field. We will derive that condition later. So this is just to know the construction side of the betatron, in which we are having a highly evacuated annular tube known as donut tube, which is placed between electromagnetic coils, and through this coil AC current is passed on, so that changing that current there will be increasing magnetic flux, and the electrons, here you can see an electron injector. So the electrons are emitted from a heated filament and they are injected into the donut when B is equal to 0. So initially there is no magnetic field, and these electrons from a hot filament are injected into the donut tube when the magnetic field is 0. Now what happens? The magnetic field starts to increase. So the magnetic field rises sinusoidally. You can think of a sine wave here. So the magnetic field will vary like a sine wave. And what is the peculiarity of this betatron is that the acceleration of the electron takes place during the first quarter of the time period of the oscillating magnetic field. I repeat, see, we are having an oscillating magnetic field, and this magnetic field can be represented as a sine wave, isn't it? So the sine wave is having a period capital T. So what will be the quarter cycle of the sine wave? First quarter means the whole sine wave is of a period capital T. So first quarter means it is T by 4. So that whenever this electron is injected into the donut tube, it gets accelerated during the first quarter of the time period. That is exactly at the end of the period T by 4. That means when T is equal to T by 4, you can draw a sine wave and can represent the T there. Now what is the region where T is equal to T by 4? That is the first quarter of the cycle, isn't it? So the magnetic field will attain a peak value there when T is equal to T by 4. So when B attains the peak value, an instantaneous current is passed through this coil, which changes the magnetic field from the stable orbit, so that the electrons are deflected from the stable orbit to the target. I repeat, we have a magnetic field here, and this magnetic field is going to rise or change sinusoidally. So whenever the electron is inside the donut tube, the first acceleration takes place when the magnetic field increases, and when it attains the maximum value, that is at T equal to T by 4, an instantaneous current is passed through this coil, so that the magnetic field from the stable orbit value, and as a result the electrons are deflected from the stable orbit and it will hit a target. So what is the peculiarity of this target? The target will emit X-rays, and this process repeats itself and the X-ray beam is obtained. I repeat the process. That is, we are having an electron injector from, that means it is a heated filament. From this heated filament, electrons are injected into the donut tube at the instant when B is equal to 0. So when B equal to 0, there is an electron here. Now what happens? The magnetic field changes sinusoidally. That means the sine wave is increasing, isn't it? So whenever the magnetic field is increasing, the acceleration takes place and it attains a maximum value at T equal to T by 4. When B attains the peak value, what happens? The electron has covered this much distance and an instantaneous current is passed, so that the electron is expelled out to the target and the target produces X-ray beam, and this process continues and the X-ray beam is obtained after each interval T. So that is the construction and working of betatron. So it consists of an evacuated an angular tube D, which is known as donut chamber or donut tube, and this is placed between the poles of an electromagnet, and this electromagnet is excited using an alternating current AC, which is of 50 cycles per second. Now the electrons are emitted with the help of, see here is a F that denotes the heated filament. So from here the electrons are emitted into the donut tube at the beginning of each cycle of alternating current. And the increasing, see here you can see the sine wave. So here, from here the magnetic field is increasing. So when it attains a maximum value, the acceleration also increases to a maximum value. So the increasing magnetic flux gives rise to a voltage gradient around the donut, which accelerates the orbiting electrons. So this is another picture showing the betatron. So this is the tube inside which the electrons undergoes a constant radius and get expelled out to the target. So the principle of betatron is same as that of a transformer, in which an alternating current applied to the coil induces an alternating current in the secondary. Here secondary coil means donut shaped vacuum chamber. So when the electron is injected in donut, the alternating magnetic field has two effects. One is the electromotive force, which is produced in the electron orbit by changing the magnetic flux. So the magnetic flux is changing, giving rise to the electromotive force, and the radial force is produced by the reaction of magnetic field, whose direction is perpendicular to the electron velocity, which makes the electron move in a circular path. So two forces are there, electromotive force and the radial force. Electromotive force due to the changing magnetic flux, and the radial force due to the reaction of the magnetic field, which makes the electron to move in a circular path. So that's the operation, that is electron from an electron gun or a heated filament injected to the donut shaped vacuum chamber, so that at that time the magnetic field is just 0. The electrons now make several thousand revolutions and gain energy. When the magnetic field has reached its maximum value, the electrons are pulled out from their orbit, and either these electrons, the expelled electrons, can either strike a target and produce X-rays, or these electrons can emerge from the apparatus through a window. So that the emerging electrons can be used for other purposes, or these emerging electrons can strike a target and can produce X-rays. I think it's clear to you. Let's move on to the derivation side. So we are having an electron who is moving in a circular orbit of radius r in a magnetic field. Now capital B be the magnetic field at this orbit. So what is the magnetic flux? We know that magnetic flux is represented by phi. So phi suffix B means that it is a magnetic flux. We had already studied electric flux also, isn't it? So in order to identify it as magnetic flux, phi is given as phi suffix B. So you have to write B a little bit lower to phi, so that phi suffix B represents the magnetic flux, and this magnetic flux increases at the rate of d phi by dt. That means as time changes, this magnetic flux is changing, isn't it? So d by dt of phi, that give rise to the induced EMF. So you can write induced EMF is equal to d phi by dt. Don't write phi into B, it is phi suffix B. I repeat, it is only phi B represents only the magnetic flux, phi suffix B. So induced EMF is equal to d by dt of phi. Now what is the work done in one revolution? So induced EMF into charge will give you the work done. I think you have studied that relation in electrostatics in the last year. So you can write induced EMF into charge. Since electron is revolving, we can multiply it with E. So we have the induced EMF of d phi by dt into E. Now this work must be equal to the tangential force F acting on the electron multiplied with the length. As you know, work done is equal to force into distance. So force is F and distance, since the electron is moving in a circular orbit of radius r, the distance covered is 2 pi r. So F into 2 pi r. Now both the equations are the equations of work done. So you can equate these equations and can find out the value of F, force. So you got force as E by 2 pi r into d phi by dt. Isn't it? Now, the electron is moving in a circular orbit, isn't it? So, in the case of a circular orbit, the centripetal force must be provided by some other force, isn't it? So, which is the force existing here, which will provide the centripetal force required for the electron? That is the magnetic Lorentz force. So, you can equate centripetal force with that of Lorentz force. So it is mv square by r, which is equal to BeV. So mv is equal to, you will get mv is equal to BeR. And from Newton's law, F is equal to d by dt of P or d by dt of mv. That means d by dt of BeR. That is ER into dB by dt. So here we also got an expression for force. Here also we got an expression for force. What we can do, we can equate both these forces, so that we will get an expression for d by dt of phi as 2 pi r square dB by dt. See, this is r square. So d by dt of phi b is equal to 2 pi r square dB by dt. On integrating, you can write it as either, so integrating what we will get phi b, isn't it? So suffix phi suffix b, phi b is equal to 2 pi r square into b. And this condition is known as Betatron condition. See, on integrating, we can give upper and lower limits, isn't it? So how you can write this phi b as phi 2 minus phi 1, isn't it? So you can write it as also phi 2 minus phi 1, which is equal to 2 pi r square b. So that is what I had said earlier. That is the magnetic flux. Here it is magnetic flux is twice that of uniform magnetic field. That is magnetic flux is equal to 2 into B. Pi r square is a constant, isn't it? So we can write it as for Betatron condition to hold, the magnetic flux must be twice as that for a uniform magnetic induction. Now we had said that this magnetic field, we can represent this magnetic field as a sine wave, isn't it? So the magnetic flux as phi is equal to phi 0 into sine omega t. So let's move on to the derivation side again. So we have the magnetic flux is varying sinusoidally. So we can represent phi as phi 0 into sine omega t. Now what is the energy gained by the electron in each turn? So we know that if V sub potential difference applied, the energy attained is EV. So we can write it as E into V. So E into V is equal to E into d phi by dt. See, induced EMF is equal to d phi by dt. You know that. So you can substitute V as d phi by dt itself. So you have phi, differentiate it and apply here. So it will be energy per turn as E phi 0 omega into cos omega t. Here we are going to derive the final energy of the electron coming out from a beta turn. So in each turn, the energy gained by the electron is E phi 0 omega cos omega t. Then this has to be multiplied with the number of turns, isn't it? So that we will get what? The final energy of the electron. So now we are going to find out this final energy. So we have got the energy per turn as E phi 0 omega cos omega t. Now, what is the average energy per turn? What is the average energy? How we will calculate the average value of a set of values? We will add all the values divided by number of the values, isn't it? Similar to that here we can find out the average energy. So this average energy is denoted as in brackets. So the average energy is, we have got energy per turn as this. So we are integrating it from 0 to t by 4. Why we are taking t by 4? We know that the acceleration takes place during the quarter cycle, isn't it? So when t becomes t by 4, during that period the acceleration takes place. So 0 to t by 4 if omega phi 0 cos omega t dt divided by total time. So total time is 0 to t by 4 dt. Now you can do the integration and you can apply the limits and can find out the value of average energy as this term. Here also you will get t. You can replace t with 2 pi by omega and can simplify, and you will get the average energy as 2 e phi 0 omega by pi. So that is the average energy per turn. Now we are going to calculate the number of turns. For that, what is the path described by the electron? Path travelled by the electron. So we know that distance is equal to velocity into time, isn't it? So distance L is equal to, we are taking the electron's speed approximate to the speed of the light. So distance L is equal to velocity c into time. Again the time is t by 4 as the acceleration takes place during the first quarter of the cycle. In all cycles during the first quarter. So t by 4, now t is replaced with the 2 pi omega. So we got L as c pi by 2 omega. So that is the length. Now what is the number of turns described by the electron? So we got the distance travelled by the electron, and it describes how much circumference 2 pi r, isn't it? So you can divide L with 2 pi r and can find out N. That is the number of turns described by the electron, and it is c by 4 omega r. So we had derived average energy per turn, and now we got the number of turns described by the electron. So how we can calculate the final energy? You can multiply these two values, isn't it? So you can multiply the value of N as well as the value of average energy and can find out the final energy of the electron as EC 50 by 2 pi r. So that is the final energy of the electron in a betatron. So that is the total energy of the electron EC50 divided by 2 pi r. See, so total energy or the final energy is always determined by the peak value, that is phi 0. Here E, C, 2 pi r are constant, isn't it? So the total energy depends only on phi 0. So the final energy is determined by the peak value phi 0 of the magnetic flux. And also the radius. We know that the radius of the electron in a betatron is a constant. So we can summarize that the final energy is determined by the peak value phi 0 of the magnetic flux with the radius as r. So we can substitute the if the radius is 0.5 m and the magnetic field B is equal to 1T. 1T means 1 Tesla. Then you can find out the value of phi 0 2 pi r square B, that is the betatron condition. From that phi 0 you can substitute it here and can find out the total value of energy, that is 150 mega electron volt. So this is the final energy attained by an electron in a betatron, 150 mega electron volt. And in the first machine built by Kirst, only 2.3 MeV was obtained. And the largest machine now available in the Illinois University produces an energy of 340 mega electron volt. So that's the need of a high energy in particle accelerators. So I think the session is clear to you. We have the basic principle behind this, in which the electrons are accelerated in a stable orbit of fixed radius by increasing the magnetic flux through the orbit. Now we had seen the construction part and also the working part. And the last we had seen the derivation, in which we had derived an expression for attaining the final energy of an electron in a betatron. Now let's move to the last session, uses of betatron. We had said that the high energy electron from a betatron can be used for other purposes as such, or it can be allowed to hit a target so that X-rays are produced. And these X-rays are used for the treatment of cancer and other diseases. Also, these X-rays can be used to produce nuclear reactions. Now, the electrons from a betatron, high energy electrons, are used for the study of properties of solids, and also these high energy electrons are used for research in biological sciences. So study one or two uses of the betatron also in order to include it in your answer. So I think the session is clear to you. Thank you.